For millions of years, human beings lived on the move, hunting and gathering in small temporary bands. Then, around 10,000 BCE, we stopped. People learned to domesticate plants and animals, and settled agriculture spread across the globe. But a cluster of mud brick houses next to a wheat field is not a city. True urban life, with massive populations, specialized jobs, and centralized administration, emerged much later and in a very specific place, Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in present-day Iraq. This map shows the early settlement zones of Mesopotamia. Down here in the south, the rivers flooded regularly, dumping rich, fertile silt across the desert. It was an agricultural paradise capable of feeding huge populations, but it was also a geographic trap. While the mud grew abundant crops, the surrounding landscape offered absolutely nothing else. There was no timber to build cartwheels or roof beams. There was no stone to carve into tools. And there were no metal ores to forge weapons. To survive in this environment, early settlers couldn't simply rely on their own harvests. If they wanted to build anything stronger than a mud hut, they had to establish massive, long-distance supply chains to bring those missing resources in from the mountains. Geography forced them out of isolation. To convince distant mountain tribes to part with their copper and timber, Mesopotamians had to trade the only things they had in abundance: agricultural produce and textiles. They needed to generate massive surpluses of grain, wool, and oil beyond what they consumed themselves. Generating and processing that kind of surplus meant society had to restructure. For the first time, people stopped growing their own food. Society relied on a division of labor, where a single farmer grew enough wheat to feed a dozen people, freeing everyone else to focus entirely on different tasks. This gave rise to full-time specialists. Weavers processed the wool. Smiths took the imported copper and tin, smelting them into bronze tools. And carvers dedicated their lives to shaping imported stone into delicate ornaments. We can see the vast reach of these early supply chains in the artifacts left behind. This blue statuette, found in the region, is made of lapis lazuli, a precious stone that had to be imported from thousands of miles away. The ultimate symbol of this new economy was the cylinder seal. As seen in this close-up showing a seal alongside its impression, these intricate stone cylinders were rolled over wet clay to lock containers and authorize documents. They marked ownership for goods traveling vast distances. True urbanism isn't defined by population density, it is defined by total economic interdependence. In this system, the carver needs the bronze smith for tools, the smith needs the merchant for copper, and everyone relies on the farmer for food. No single person can survive on their own. This level of interdependence creates a massive logistical headache. Someone has to collect the extra grain, coordinate the foreign trade expeditions, and distribute daily rations to the thousands of specialists who aren't farming. The solution was the early Mesopotamian temple. Looking at these excavated brick walls and open courtyards from Uruk, dating to around 3000 BCE, we see a complex that operated as the city's central administrative hub and largest industrial employer. This archaeological plan of an early temple layout highlights specific focal points, like ovens and altars. Within these complexes, laborers were put to work processing raw produce, pressing oil, and spinning massive quantities of wool for export. Managing this factory required an enormous amount of data tracking. Temple administrators had to log shipments of imported metal ores, record the completion of woven textiles, and distribute specific daily allowances of grain and beer to hundreds of individual workers. The sheer scale of this centralized trade system eventually hit a hard biological limit. A massive city with thousands of interdependent workers generates more transaction data than human memory can reliably store. Relying on verbal agreements was no longer possible. Urban life faced an information bottleneck. If the temple managers forgot who delivered grain, or a merchant lied about a shipment of copper, the fragile trust holding the specialized economy together would break. The city was on the verge of collapsing under its own administrative weight. To keep the economy moving, administrators figured out how to take spoken sounds and physical inventory and translate them into permanent, visible signs. The first recorded documents are strictly economic. These early clay tablets, divided into distinct sections, track inventories of oxen, fish, and bread loaves entering the temple warehouses. To record these transactions, a scribe would take the cut end of a sharp reed and press it into a block of wet clay. Once dried in the sun, the tablet became a nearly indestructible ledger. Over centuries, these literal pictures became increasingly abstract. This chart shows Kaneyasam syllabic signs, demonstrating how drawing an ox or a fish evolved into wedge-shaped marks that represented the phonetic sounds of the Sumerian language. The system that eventually captured all of human history and philosophy began as a tool for temple managers desperately trying to manage a warehouse. Once the information bottleneck was shattered by writing, the Mesopotamian city was free to scale massively without falling apart. We can see the results in this excavated street plan of Ur, a fully mature city around 2000 BCE. Outside the organized temple complex, everyday citizens lived in a chaotic maze of closely packed houses and narrow, winding alleys, too tight for wheeled carts. Writing soon escaped the inventory lists. Schools were established to train a new generation of record keepers, and these scribes began recording the customary laws of the land and building upon the mathematical discoveries of their predecessors. Managing a city required precise measurement for construction, irrigation, and land distribution. Scholars recorded complex tables for multiplication and division. They even documented a value for the square root of 2, accurate to within 1/1,000,000th of its true value, to solve geometric problems and ensure precision. The physical mud brick walls of Uruk and Ur eventually eroded back into the desert, but the invisible systems those ancient people engineered out of pure necessity, the long-distance supply chains, the specialized division of labor, and the written word, never disappeared. They became the operating system for the modern world.